New Zealand's borders are currently closed to almost every single travellers coming into the country, and those that can come into New Zealand, those rare exceptions, are subject to a 14 days quarantine. But in December, there has been 4 major news items that came out and will affect the reopening of the New Zealand borders in the future. We're going to cover all of them right now in this video, so stay subscribed and let's get started.
Alright guys, just to make this clear, this video is about, and its predictions are applying to all types of visas and relates to quarantine-free travel. So when we say when the borders open, that means quarantine-free travel to New Zealand. And this video also doesn't apply to New Zealand residents or citizens. But don't forget guys to subscribe when we come up with more videos as updates are coming up, and we will keep you up to date with all the news as it comes out about New Zealand's borders opening.
Alright, so as promised in this video, we're going to get started with the 4 big news items. We're going to give you the exact kind of quote and the exact announcement, and then we will give you a quick opinion of ours on what that actually means for the border openings, and then we're going to be moving on to our predictions around the end of the video. And I will put some timestamp right now in the bottom of the screen so you know where to get every piece of news that you are interested in. Let's get started with the first item on the list.
Yeah, so the first piece of news that we want to talk about is relating to the vaccine. And we have got a quote from Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield. And she says, we've got the advantage... He says, sorry, Ashley is a he/she name. So anyway, we've got to the advantage of not having to use the vaccine right now because we have no big outbreak. So we can watch and see what happens with the development of the Pfizer vaccine in real time in the UK and look at safety monitoring data.
Alright, so our understanding from that, and again, so what Laura just read right now was the official quote from the Director General of Health, but here's our understanding behind it and what we think that may mean for the border reopening. So this section I'm going to cover right now is our opinion and not the official quote right here. So the first takeaway from that statement and the longer interview that statement come from was that in our opinion New Zealand is not on a rush to roll out vaccines until they are fully proven safe and effective, and they probably will use data from other countries to decide that. So New Zealand is very happy to kind of take a wait and see approach to see if the vaccine works in the medium and long term in other countries. And medium and long terms can take 6 months to a year to see what happened in other countries before it's rolled out here in New Zealand. So there is no rush in New Zealand to vaccinate the entire population and reopening the borders. That we really feel like that statement makes that very, very clear. And finally, and I feel like it's really kind of obvious from even the rest of the interviews that this statement is coming from. We think that New Zealand is unlikely to use emergency provisions to push the vaccine through the New Zealand population as fast as other countries is going to be doing. New Zealand is kind of happy to just kind of wait and see that it's safe, and once the entire procedure is done, then they're going to roll out the vaccine.
Cool.
Alright, moving on to the next piece of information.
Yeah, so the next piece of news we want to talk about is the Cook Islands, basically which looks like one of the first countries that New Zealand may open its borders with. So getting straight into that, it is the first opening of the travel bubble with a country, with this country was discussed around August 2019. And it has been consistently pushed since then, with the New Zealand delegation making a trip to the Cook Islands in November. And subsequently there was a late March travel bubble date announced. So that's how we interpret it.
So yeah, so again, those are factual news, and here's what we interpret from that, what we take from that, what our takeaway. And again, this takeaway is just our opinion and it's not the official news. So we have realized with what happens with the Cook Islands that it actually takes a very long time from wanting to open the border to the Cook Islands to actually opening it. If we look at just what happened with the Cook Island, it took 4 to 6 months to get that started. So it's a very long time. So it's likely a template that we're going to want to apply to other countries where New Zealand will want to open its border to. The New Zealand government also looks like they're wanting to use the Cook Islands as a kind of a test trial to see how the border opening will work and then apply that template again to other countries. So it's unlikely that other countries will open before the what will happen, before the reopening with the Cook Islands. So it's likely that the Cook Islands will be the first country, and when they have some takeaways to take from that, then they will start opening with other countries. And obviously, when we talk about the Cook Islands, and we'll also talk about a couple of other small islands in the South Pacific which are COVID-19 free. That's our last takeaway from this. The Cook Islands have been COVID-19 free for the entire time. There has been 0 cases in the entirety of the country, and yet it still takes that much time to reopen its border to the Cook Islands. So that makes us feel that countries that have cases of COVID-19 or even current cases right now may actually have to go through an even more strenuous process.
Yeah.
So again, those one were just our takeaway, just our opinion. And so let's move on to the next piece of news.
Yep, so next on our list is referring to students. And we have a quote from the Minister of Education, Chris Hipkins, and they say, "We are likely to see border restrictions continue over the next 12 to 18 months. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the border restrictions look exactly the same during that time. So we are going to be looking to try to do everything that we can to create pathways for international students to come into New Zealand."
All right, so that was the official quote. Again, here's our opinion and our takeaway from this. And I know I keep on repeating myself on that, but I just really want to make sure that we don't misinform you and we just give you fact about all the piece of news that we are talking about, and after we're also making sure that we make a difference with our opinion, just so you're not getting misinformed. Anyway, so now we're talking about my opinion, or our opinion, about what it means for students. So the first takeaway from this piece of news is that we don't think that any normal numbers of students will come to New Zealand within the next year to year and a half, and that's from the recording of this video, so from December 2019. We also think that there may again be some exceptions created. The New Zealand government has created some exception late in 2019 to allow up to 250 PhD students to come back to New Zealand to finish their study. They still had to go through the quarantine and do all this process, but they were allowed to actually reapply and come to New Zealand. So so there may be some extra exceptions going during the next year and a half, but the normal number of students are not coming back to New Zealand for a year or to a year and a half. And it's still likely, the last takeaway from that is that it's still likely that the quarantine and its fee, which the quarantine fee is 3,100 New Zealand dollars for a 14-day quarantine, will still apply to students coming to New Zealand when and if they are allowed again.
Yeah.
All right, last piece of news.
Okay, so the final piece of news that we want to talk about is the border closure policy review. So the government announced in December that they will review their border closure policy in mid-2021.
All right, so again, so that's a fact, and here's my opinion of it, our opinion on it. So the first takeaway from that sentence is that we don't think there's going to be any major changes to the quarantine policies of New Zealand and its 3,100 New Zealand dollar fee until at least June 2021. In fact, in June 2021, they are only set to review their policies. So that may just be when the review gets started or when the review is getting released, and there is not going to be any action until the end of 2021 at the earliest, because when there is a bit of a review, then it takes even longer to get the ball rolling and to actually get something started. As we just took the example of the Cook Islands, as soon as they want to do something, then there is a lot of red tape to go through first up. And so, yeah, so in short, we're thinking that there will be little to no travel quarantine-free allowed in New Zealand until very late 2021, or more realistically, 2022 at the earliest, and late 2021, just to make it clear, it's November to December 2021. All right, so let's move on to our predictions.
Yeah, so this is the part of the video now where we're going to talk about our predictions of when we think the borders will open in New Zealand for international travellers. And just to make it really clear, first of all, they are just predictions, based off the news that we've been discussing during this video. And also, yeah, there are opinions. They're not official information, so there has been no official announcements, except for there's been a bit more of an official announcement for the Cook Islands, but for all other countries, there's been no official announcements of when the borders are opening as of yet. And our predictions that we've got right now that we're going to discuss, it applies to all types of visas. And also we're going to make sure that we update our predictions monthly on this channel. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe so that you can get notifications when we are getting our next border opening predictions up on the next video up available.
All right. So before we talk about the Cook Islands and other places like that, we are going to be talking about the big item in the news. It's Australia. So on the 14th of December 2019, the New Zealand Prime Minister said, "A travel bubble with Australia can be expected in the first quarter of 2021 pending confirmation from the Australian cabinet and no significant changes in the circumstances in either country." So there is already some states in Australia which have open travel for New Zealanders, but New Zealand hasn't reciprocated that. So that means that Australians, when coming to New Zealand right now, are still subject to the quarantine. But they are eager to get that ball rolling within the first quarter of 2021. That probably means that just after the Cook Islands, the Australian border will be open. But that is only if and only if there is no extra outbreaks in either Australia or New Zealand. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So for this reason, Australia, we are putting our prediction for border opening to March or April 2021, barring there is any significant changes.
Yep, so next on the list we have Cook Islands, and as we've discussed previously in this video, there has been an announcement for the borders to open between the Cook Islands and New Zealand for late March 2021. So that's the Cook Islands, and that moves us on to another country similar to the Cook Islands in that they are an associated state with New Zealand, and that is Niue. If they perhaps follow the same direction as the Cook Islands, we predict that the border opening between Niue and New Zealand will be April 2021.
Alright, so let's move on to basically all other countries. I know that in previous videos we went countries by countries and gave you some predictions, but because we have received so many different news in December, and they've all have very much affected our views on when will the quarantine-free travel be allowed between all other countries and New Zealand, we kind of batched everything together and try to give you a realistic time frame, which is November, December 2021 or 2022 at the earliest. So I know it's a very vague prediction, and I know it's a big bulky prediction, but it was really important for us to give you a realistic time frame. Now, here's a few bits of caveats to these stories. Travel with quarantine restrictions may still be allowed between your country and New Zealand. So that means that, for example, a student that can afford to pay the 3,100 New Zealand dollar quarantine fee and is allocated a spot to study in New Zealand may still be able to come to New Zealand. So there will be some limited exceptions to come during 2021. However, due to the limited amount of quarantine facilities in New Zealand and a lot of other factors, there will be heavy restriction, and there's only going to be a very small minorities of people that are going to be able to come to New Zealand. Again, none of this is applying to New Zealand residents, which are allowed to come to New Zealand. There will be allocated places in the quarantine facilities, barring that they get their vouchers. But again, that doesn't apply to New Zealand residents. There will not be, in its our opinion, that there is not going to be thousands of students, thousands of partners visas, thousands of work visas of people that that are going to come to New Zealand in 2021. There will be very heavy restrictions for now. Now I know that this is a pretty bad news, and it's not, it's not fun, especially looking back at what our other prediction videos were saying, and I want to stress that we want to be wrong, right? I just cannot wait to be in April, and in April 2021, and have everybody vaccinated, everybody happy coming to New Zealand, no quarantine travel and everything. So we take no pleasure in giving you bad news. We just want to make sure that you have realistic expectations, because we know that thousands and thousands and thousands of people are actually planning their life around a potential reopening of the borders in New Zealand. All right, so that wraps up these predictions right here. We obviously will be updating those videos quite often, so it may be a good idea to subscribe.
Yeah, so just to make it super clear, that whole section just there was our predictions, our opinions, just so we can help you guys sort of get a bit of set your expectations a bit more, accurately. I know a lot of people are really keen to book flights right now and, try and get their visa processed right now, but there's no point in, wasting your money if the borders aren't officially open. So we just want to help you guys sort of know when to start planning or start planning your trips to New Zealand. But obviously you shouldn't really start until everything has been officially announced. That's just our recommendation anyway. So we will update our prediction videos for the borders opening monthly. So do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so that you get the notifications for when we have our new videos up. And as news comes out as well, we will be updating these videos. So yeah, and just to also make it clear that all the predictions that we've made are applying to all types of visas and quarantine-free travel. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye bye.